Welcome, it's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We're in Sacramento today, and we are joined by Doss Williams. He is a member of the California State Assembly, representing beautiful portions of Santa Barbara County, including UCSB, a wonderful school, a beautiful campus. You were also chair of higher ed in the Assembly last session, and so sadly, you know about the proliferation of sexual assaults on campus.
That's right.
Not that UCSB is a hotbed of it, but there's no doubt it happens everywhere.
And this is a problem not just at UCSB.
Right.
I represent Ventura County too, so we have 3 community colleges in the district and 1 CSU just outside of the district.
Channel Islands?
Yes, and so what we found in our hearings is that, number one, the chances of a young woman getting justice through the criminal process is almost none.
Why?
The evidentiary standard of beyond a reasonable doubt. And so that really the only way that they can achieve justice is through going through the code of conduct procedure on campus.
It's interesting.
So
when I was in college, I was part of the peer review process. So I know from what you speak. And there's no doubt that universities do their very best to make sure that those code of conduct proceedings are done in a professional, official way. At the same time, I must ask you though, you may have heard that at the end of last year, Rolling Stone issued a huge expose about purported sexual assault at a fraternity at the University of Virginia. And for better or for worse, the story started to fall apart. And Rolling Stone has had to retract at a certain level. And so, you know, it kind of begs the question about what is sexual assault? And what about those that are just not victims but make noise? And I mean, literally, they cry wolf and make it so when someone really is a victim, no one believes them.
Even in a judicial affairs process, you have to prove with the preponderance of evidence that something took place, that a rape took place. And the fact is, 1 out of 5 women is raped while they're in college. And so this is something of such large proportions, and only 5% ever go for any remedy. And what we found is only a minuscule part of even those 5% achieve any form of justice. For instance, at UCSB, this is at UCSB, in the last 4 years, not a single student has been dismissed for rape.
What about convicted on the criminal side? Are you aware?
The DA could not point to a single case. So essentially that means there's zero accountability for rape in my community. And that makes me angry.
Sure.
And there are some ways to make the system better. One is that there should be some minimum standards when someone is convicted of a rape. Convicted is the wrong word, but found to have raped someone through the judicial affairs process on campus. They should be considered dismissal rather than just suspension. And if there's suspension, there should be a minimum amount of time so that the student that is a victim at least should not have to be forced to go to classes and on campus with the perpetrator.
And you're proposing legislation specifically on this point.
Absolutely.
And so it appears that there are 3 parts to this legislation. The first part would do just that. It would require the adjudicator or whomever is on this panel to consider suspension for at least 2 years, to look at expulsion when appropriate, to report and disclose the adjudication outcomes.
And that's really important because even as chair of higher education, most educational institutions were resistant to even provide us with the information of what has been happening. So a reporting requirement to the legislature is really important. The second is we found at community colleges that often someone will be dismissed from a community college for rape, and then they'll just go to another community college 10 miles down the street. So there needs to be some accountability on that. And there needs to be the recognition that if a rape occurs off campus, if it involves students, then that is under the jurisdiction of the college to make a finding concerning whether or not that student should be enrolled.
It's fascinating you bring up that point. I had been an adjunct professor at a private college in Southern California, and out of nowhere a student approached me, and she indicated that she had been the victim of a sexual assault right off campus. She was not a minor, and so I was absolutely flummoxed about what to do and where to go.
Right.
ultimately I called the Dean of Student Affairs, and I thought that was the appropriate reference. But what that speaks to is, even someone like me, not that I'm, special, but I didn't know what to do.
And victims don't.
And what about when victims come to, sources of authority?
Right.
What do I didn't know what to do.
And now more and more campuses, this is the good news, more and more campuses are having a single point of contact, a single advocate.
Let me ask you about the perpetrators or potential perpetrators. Because in the final analysis, there are two sides of every assault, the victim and the perpetrator. The goal is that there not be a perpetrator.
Right.
And so
the goal is to change the culture of rape on campus.
Exactly.
So that men realize that we all have a role to not tolerate the sort of mentality that leads to rape among our peers.
Is there anything in this bill, or can there be a bill, or a regulation, or whatever it may be, to address this issue, the perpetrator side? We're always I shouldn't say we're always. I just wonder if we can nip this in the bud.
Absolutely. I think that the piece of legislation in my package that requires this to be on someone's transcript. So right now, if you cheat on a test, it will be on your permanent record. But if you rape a woman, it will not be on your record. That seems crazy to me.
But aside from, and I don't mean to push you, but I'll push you for a second. Aside from the perpetrator, what about preventing the perpetration?
Absolutely.
What can we do? What can the state do? President Obama has been talking about no is no, and at the Super Bowl there was this whole notion. It was focused on domestic violence, but be that as it may, it's part of the Zeitgeist now. But still, UCSB, a major institution, outstanding student body.
There is good prevention programs on campus now. Yes, they are very recent. They are focused on not just a victim or perpetrator. They're also focused on what you do as a bystander. Bystander training is much more cutting edge than some of the things that have been done in the past. And the good news is that has been a strong culture change, that the universities are often putting registration holds on students that do not attend these trainings. So in order to register for classes, you have to go to those trainings.
What about the question of drugs and alcohol? We know, I am sure that in the vast majority of cases of sexual assault, drugs and alcohol play a role.
They do. And that is, you got to realize that we shouldn't be blaming victims.
No.
Stigmatizing, but drugs and alcohol do play a role. And you are your brother's or sister's keeper. When people that you know are drunk or high, it's important to take some responsibility to make sure that they get home safely.
I have to ask you, if I may, Santa Barbara is still reeling from the Isla Vista massacre. It's less than a year away, or past, I should say. And so how is your community doing? I think about this and then I just hit my mind. How's everyone doing?
Well, this is a part of what's going on in Isla Vista. There is not just the shocking tragedies that we saw last year, but there's everyday tragedies in Isla Vista, and that is why we are attempting to remedy this by making the system better. UCSB can do better than a few people suspended and a few people voluntarily leaving UCSB through their judicial affairs process. But I want to help them do that. I don't want to just get down on them, and that's why we are trying to attempt to improve the process at our colleges for victims of sexual assault.
His name is Doss Williams. He's a member of the California State Assembly. My name is Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition.